The 2025 season is right around the corner. Dean Legge joined by Ryan Curley and Mackenzie Brooks. Mackenzie's from CBS Sports, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Dogs betting. About betting on the Dogs and what kind of is out there and so forth. That's Mackenzie's expertise. Mackenzie, a lot of the books out there have Georgia around 9.5 for the over/under this season. They host Alabama, they host Ole Miss, they have the usual. They got to go to Tennessee. They have the usual slate of SEC games, very challenging, and Texas comes as well. What's your view of the world on that 9.5 number, and what should people be wary of as far as all that's concerned?
Unfortunately, I think they hit the nail on the head with the 9.5 number here. A lot of what my team does here is we're trying to basically reverse engineer what the odds makers are doing to get to these numbers, right? Like, how did they land on this number 9.5? And typically it ends up being, the decimal of your percent chance to win each game, right? So they give them around 100% chance to win basically those first two games. You see them with around a 60% chance to win some of these home games against some of these tougher teams. So that's how you end up with essentially around a 9.2 number is physically adding up their win total. And that they have it juiced to the to the over because they know that they can get the public to bet on such a popular and nationally covered team. I think sometimes that's when you see odds makers take advantage of you a little bit. It's not a number I'm willing to put the mortgage on necessarily. I think it will be right around that 10-win number. I think, ironically, Georgia Tech at the end of the season could be what pushes us over or under. Hopefully it's not as close as it was last year. But again, it's just funny that they could play a very pivotal part in our season. But college lines are always interesting to me. It's really across the board when you see teams that are just popular. You saw it with Colorado. Every single game, odds makers are trying to get you pay a little more than you probably should have needed to, especially with their futures. Teams like Texas, teams that everyone's excited about, shockingly, you're getting taken advantage of a little bit.
Well, I've got your attention. Check out the link down below from our good friends at BetMGM. Use the promo code MEGABET, MEGABET, to get a chance of up to $1,500 on bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. The link is right down below. You can bet on any number of things. Futures for the NFL, futures for college football. They got baseball betting, all sorts of things that you can have fun with. Let's be responsible about it. Don't miss out on this. It's a really cool thing. Again, from our buddies over at BetMGM, use the promo code MEGABET, MEGABET. Get a chance for up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Check it out. Links right down below. Yeah, so Ryan, why don't you jump in here? We witnessed all these games last year. They amazingly did get to 10 regular season wins, not without a lot of drama. If you think about the Tech game, the Kentucky game, a lot of the Alabama, they fell apart they fell apart at the beginning nonetheless. But Ryan, that 9.5, Kirby's not gone under 10 in a regular season since 2020 when they only had 10 regular season games, I believe. Or no, excuse me. Well, they had 10 scheduled. That didn't work out. What does that 9.5 look like to you? What are we, six months away from Georgia Marshall, something like that? What say you about that?
Well, I mean, there's no other SEC team that's above that number. Even Texas, who has better odds in general, is also at that 9.5. And it's the schedule, right? That's what it comes down to. Because when you look at the Big Ten teams, they've got Penn State, Oregon, and Ohio State all at their line being at 10.5. So they look at that. They saw what they did last year. They saw the crapshoot that the SEC was this year. But like you said, Georgia's a handful of plays away from being 8-4, right? A couple things go wrong up in Lexington. Someone lets someone score in overtime in one of those 8 overtimes, and this is an 8-4 team that's not in the playoff. This year, those huge games are going to be at home, right? They still have to go up to Knoxville and play Tennessee in September, so that's going to be tough, and that's going to be early on in the season. But you look at it this time around, and we don't know as much about the team heading into this spring as we did last spring, but you look at it and you say, well, if they could pull it off the way that they did last year, it is a tough line. Like Mackenzie was saying at the beginning, that's right about where you're comfortable or uncomfortable going above or below. But betting on Georgia to not win 10 games, something feels wrong about that.
I think there's also from the media as well, odds makers are very in tune with what the public is talking about. And I think a lot of people casual fans freak out at the fact that Carson Beck's no longer here. It's like, well, the plan was never for Carson Beck to return for this season, right? We thought he'd be in the NFL, but there was no version of the story where Kirby wasn't prepared. This program wasn't mentally prepared to pass the torch. So I think you see some people worried about that and over exaggerate there. But, if you break down the P's and Q's of the team, like a lot of it is offsetting what we had last year. And you look around the league, the conference as well, like other teams lost a lot too. I think of that game on the road against Tennessee. It's like we have 2 games to figure out who our quarterback is. I'm not so scared of Nico anymore. I'm curious what you guys are feeling. They lost a ton of production as well. So if I were to pick a game to be on the road of those tougher competition, I'm happy the way that schedule turned out. We give them around 65-70% chance to take that win.
Yeah, well, I mean, Tennessee lost their best offensive and their best defensive player heading into this year. Doesn't usually bode well. You saw that happen for Georgia a couple of years ago. But it's still, games in Knoxville are always going to be tough. Georgia has their number the last decade or so. But, yeah, when you look around the league, though, like you're saying, for the most part, in the teams at the top, they're going through quarterback changes. Texas is handed the keys to Arch Manning, has similar experience to Gunnar Stockton at this point in college football. Tennessee is one of those teams that is not handing the keys over to a different guy, and you expect someone in their third year who's projected to have all this talent, and we've seen it. But he just didn't perform in the big moments throughout the year, right? He had nice stretches of play against Alabama, but for the most part, all of his big money games were early on in the year when they were playing out of conference teams. So we've yet to see Nico really play at that level against a legitimate defense. And we know what we saw in Athens when he went down there, and he was terrorized for the most part, right? They put together two drives in the first half, but other than that, they couldn't move the ball.
Here's my question for Mackenzie, because I'm such a, I don't know if Ryan knows how psychotic I am about numbers. I think he gets an understanding of it. You keep throwing around the 60%. I can't recall what you said about Tennessee going up to Neyland. Did you say 60, 70%?
Yeah, we give them a 60% chance at Tennessee. I mean, we give them a 60% chance at a couple of these on the road. The hardest game was a pick'em versus Texas at home this year for us.
Okay.
Did you give Georgia a 60% chance at Tennessee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so what is the numerical value of 60%? Is that they'd be about a 3.5, 3-point favorite, something like that at Neyland?
Yeah, typically.
Maybe slightly higher, perhaps?
No, it's around that field goal spread. I mean, obviously a 50-50, you're closer to a pick 'em there. You really don't see touchdown spreads until you're hitting like that 80%, I'd say there.
See, I think people don't. I think the betting public understands that sort of thing. I think sort of the knuckle dragger community, which is Dawg Post, doesn't realize how significant once you get past a score. That is in the NFL, that's a blowout kind of. But once you get past say 6.5, 7, that is a significant number. And Georgia very rarely lately has been favored by fewer than 10 points, generally speaking. Now, Texas, Notre Dame, sort of the more challenging games, no. But how many of these games do you view from y'all's, when you're taking your abacuses out, or abaci, whatever the plural of that is, and you're moving numbers left and right, about how many games do you view Georgia as being a double-digit favorite on? I'm going to imagine maybe if they have 12 games, maybe they'd be a double in 8?
Yeah, 8 might be healthy. I'd say.
It might be
healthy. Say 7 to 8. Yeah. I mean, here's the other thing with some of these blowout type of situation games, maybe it's a 30-point spread against some of these, FCS teams. Like then you run the risk of a backdoor cover where, those guys are just trying to get their reps in. We've sat all of our starters. So those are the games where everyone wants to just hammer this Georgia spread because they're obviously better, but you have to be careful with that. I think a lot of times with these more double-digit spreads where you feel like this team's going to dominate, looking at the first half spread, the first quarter spread, that's typically the better angle when you're looking at these, top SEC teams versus some of the bottom teams, some of the FCS teams on their schedule. So as a betting advice, I'd say for those types of matchups, going with that team's team total over, knowing that they want to hit a number that they feel comfortable at, or just going with the fourth quarter spread of the other team and just kind of isolating that game quarter by quarter.
Hey, Ryan, the Notre Dame line, I don't know if y'all recall this. Notre Dame jumped around a little bit. There were times where I want to just get Ryan's thoughts on it. I want to throw to Mackenzie. you follow this a little closer than you did in the past, I think. But what do you, when numbers jump around, what does that say to you, Ryan?
The money's moving around. That's what that tells me, is that all the money is going towards one place, and they're trying to tick it up one way or the other to deter you from that a little bit. That's what it tells me. And Notre Dame opened as a 1.5 point favorite, right?
Yeah.
Or did it
So,
flip the
yeah.
other way around?
I think it went back and forth, especially with Carson Beck news as well.
Yeah, the Carson Beck news really confused people, which confused
Yeah.
me. It was like, there's no scenario where he's playing here. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, the numbers jumping around towards the end of it bother me, because it's not a reflection. Usually, now some things happen, and sometimes people learn things, and then the numbers change a little bit. But usually, it's just about money. And then people, I don't know, the perspective on it bothers me a little bit. We're like, well, they're a 1.5 point favor. Well, that only moved because everyone was betting on that. It's not because of anything actually
Yes,
changing.
but go ahead, Mackenzie.
There's variance to it. There's nuance to
no,
it.
I mean, every league has that team, for this year. I think it was Colorado in football. There's the Lakers in the NBA. There's the Dallas Cowboys in the NFL, where the public just wants to bet on this team. And there's literally no rhyme or reason
for them to win.
Correct. And you'll see them move the lines. Now, if you're, really deep into it, you want to see where most of the handle, where most of the money is, and then just where the public percent of bets is. Because sometimes you'll see a line move one way, but 80% of the public's on the other side.
Right.
And you're like, why is that not lining up? And it's because the smart money and those big sharps that are putting, an arm and a leg on these games that really know what they're talking about, those are the guys you really want to pay attention to. So the percent of money and the percent of the public are two very different numbers. A lot of the time they align. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you see the public wants to hammer an over in a Colorado game or in a Georgia-Texas game, but you see that the line's moving towards the under. That's because influential, real people that aren't betting $5, 10 leg parlays are the ones moving the needle, moving the line. So that's always something to be cautious of in the season.
All right. Thanks to Mackenzie for joining us. We'll see y'all on the next video.